Good afternoon. We've got the pleasure of having Tara Zeller, Dr. Tara Zeller from AIVA Nutrition, on with us today for the webinar. Super excited to have you guys on board. AIVA Nutrition is a founding member with AIVA. They've been with us from the beginning here in this kickoff for the 2024 strategic plan and movement, and been a very supportive partner, and we're super appreciative to have them on board. We have relationships at AIVA with not only her, but also James, who's the COO, and Jason, who is the CEO of the company, and they serve on different committees. So very excited to have you join us, Tara, for this short conversation webinar to kind of learn a little bit more about you and share some information to the public and the community, for members and non-members, about AIVA Nutrition and how you all specialize in this space, and what your role is with regards to the movement of the progression of the space and the professionalism of the space and the sustainability of the space. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why don't we start? It's always easy to kind of, and helpful to the community, to start with a little bit more of your background. Not only from an educational perspective, but also kind of what was the spark that got you involved in the AIVA nutrition space and AIVA hydration space. And so if you could kind of give us a little bit of an insight as to how you got where you are, that would be really helpful as we start to go forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I am the president and co-founder of AIVA Nutrition. I am a doctor of chiropractic. So I came into this space maybe a little bit differently than some other folks. Originally, out of school, I started a functional medicine practice because, I had my own health issues that I had used more natural medicine, functional medicine to support those and heal those within myself. So, IV nutrient therapy was a natural addition to my functional medicine practice. So as, when I was in school, I had dealt with some health issues. I had a lot of hormone imbalance, digestive issues that went back to my early childhood. And,
Okay.
I had, experienced different things and had utilized different medicines, conventional medicine early on, and didn't really feel like I got much result from that. And in many times, actually may have contributed to a worsening of my symptoms. So
Gotcha.
by the time I was an adult and sort of ready to choose a career, I was experiencing some health crisis already.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
that's what sort of, guided me into more natural medicine, because I was desperate to heal myself, honestly. So
Yeah.
that's what drew me into first chiropractic, but I didn't really practice chiropractic for very long. And it quickly evolved into more of a functional medicine approach, in which I did a 2-year diplomat in functional medicine. So
Okay.
so that's kind of my origins. And
Yeah.
then as I was practicing, I had healed many layers of hormone imbalance, digestive imbalance, my liver, my kidneys, all of that. I had done a lot of work with that. And I was sort of at my healthiest when I was in private practice in my late 20s, early 30s. And, but at that time, I didn't realize it, but I was living in a toxic mold environment. So I had black mold
Oh,
in my house and I didn't know it. Yeah. So here I am in functional medicine practice. I'm helping people, heal from their autoimmune conditions and support different things in their body. And, my body's starting to deteriorate.
yeah.
So that was really hard because, I didn't really know like why, I'm doing everything right.
Right. How did
I'm
you
taking
find out, real quick, before you keep going?
Yeah, so my mother-in-law actually came, and that's originally what actually led me into IV nutrient therapy. Is it was her third time having breast cancer, and she was really struggling as well. And before that, I had studied IV nutrient therapy in school, because it can support people who are undergoing, cancer therapies and things like
Right.
that.
Right.
for my mom because she had breast cancer at the time. So I was a little bit familiar about it, and my mother-in-law had come to stay with me so that we could do some IV therapy. So I was in the IV therapy a little bit before I even found out about the mold. And she came and she said, "I think you have mold."
Oh,
And then it was just you know, after that, it just snowballed into a lot of different issues. We did exactly
right.
what you weren't supposed to do. We took all the walls down and we unleashed the mold. And I was very ill at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, that's scary. It's when people are suffering from something like that, and you obviously can't see it, and you're doing everything right, but yet feels like you're running uphill, and you don't know why. I get it.
Yeah,
I get
yeah, I
it.
was on a very restrictive diet, doing all the supplements, right, everything that you're supposed to do, and it wasn't working.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Um, and that's where IV nutrient therapy came in.
Okay. Okay. So it's interesting to me to hear, your background, and we do have a few, a couple doctors of chiropractic that are involved in AIVA in a variety of different capacities, right? What is your take? The Joe average public, looks at and views a chiropractor as probably someone you'd go to, historically with a spinal issue to get maybe an adjustment. And then obviously the practice has grown significantly over the past 20 years. So it's more musculoskeletal, and now it's more even in the functional medicine. And you said you did a diplomate for 2 years. What does that look like compared to, just out of curiosity, I don't know, a traditional Western trained medical doctor, maybe not a DO, that comes out with an internal medicine degree and decides to go into the regen space or something like that. Like how is chiropractic more suited for that? And or isn't it? It was just more the path you took and the school you went to that allowed you those opportunities, being in the right place at the right time to specialize in that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. People don't realize that doctors of chiropractic, study just as long as a medical doctor. But instead of learning pharmacology, we learn what is the natural processes of the body. How is it supposed to work?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And I think that gave me a very unique perspective because rather than focusing on the disease state, I was able to focus on what is the natural biochemistry, how is it supposed to function, what
Hmm.
are the nutrient cofactors involved in that. And I think that's something that medical doctors don't get in their foundational education.
Right.
So I think that chiropractors are actually uniquely poised to be very effective in this space because they have a much deeper understanding for the innate natural biochemistry of the body. And then another thing that I think really helped me was chiropractic philosophy, which is, that the body can heal and regenerate itself. And I think that IV nutrient therapy really aligns with that philosophy. And actually we can see that in practice and in the studies that we see for, how vitamin C can help people, that yes, the body does have those mechanisms to repair itself. It has those mechanisms to regenerate. It just needs the resources to do it. So with chiropractors, that is generally a more musculoskeletal approach, but actually they are more nervous system focused on the nervous
Gotcha.
system.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
they understand that if there's an interference to the nervous system, that's going to create a downstream effect on the body, and that their goal is to remove interferences to the nervous system so that it can work how it's designed to work optimally. And that's
Gotcha.
really the premise of functional medicine as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
it's if we simplify functional medicine, it's removing the interferences to the body's ability to regenerate and repair itself, and providing the body with the resources that it needs to do that in
Yep.
simplified terms. So I think chiropractors really understand that because they don't have to unlearn, which many medical doctors do. And I really respect the medical doctors that do get into the functional medicine space and the regenerative medicine space because, they sometimes have to sort of unlearn or go against their foundational education, which is very pathology focused and disease state focused, which has its place, right? But it's just different. Functional medicine is on the other end of the spectrum from conventional traditional medicine. Conventional traditional medicine, that's if you're deep into a disease state. You need diagnosis, you need some immediate intervention to either, get you able to live your life because you cannot function, or save your life.
Yeah.
And that's very different than functional medicine, or what we're trying to achieve with IV therapy, which is way on the other end of the spectrum, which is let's not even get there.
Right.
It's quantifying prevention. Before functional medicine and before IV nutrient therapy, prevention was really just, eat well, exercise, pray, and, hope that you don't manifest an illness.
Yeah.
But with functional medicine, we're able to quantify prevention and see like, oh, you're starting to manifest an illness. Maybe we're not diagnosing it yet. It's not to that extreme point of so much tissue damage that we can give it a name, but things aren't right. The chemistry is unbalanced and your body is in a more degenerative state, oxidative stress, degenerative state, inflammation. So let's stop it. Let's do something about it. Let's identify it before it gets to that tissue damage and organ diagnostic state.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great you made a lot of different analogies that make a lot of sense. And just to capitalize on that from my point of view, my background for 25 years as a doctoral level physical therapist, and the large majority, let's call it 95% of the training was sort of post-injury, right? I mean, it was once somebody tears their rotator cuff and has surgery, here's what the rehab looks like. Or once somebody has a total knee replacement, here's what it looks like. And it was almost a foreign concept, maybe 10 years ago when I was in practice, that we started doing actual what was called like prehab, which was, okay, if this person's in a pretty significant manifested, musculoskeletal disease state, and they're going to need a surgery, and we're going to do it now, their outcome is going to be much better if we can at least give them a little bit of a tune up first. We're not going to fix them, but at least try and, strengthen the muscles around the joint that's going to be replaced and get them at a little bit of a higher functional level. Because if we do it right now and they're completely sedentary and they're in 10 out of 10 pain, now they're going to be in 12 out of 12 pain, and they're not going to be able to get out of the bed, and everything else around that area is just completely deconditioned. So I think, where you're going with that in its simple form for the public is trying to be much more proactive rather than reactive, right? And looking at it in advance. And the reason why I went on a little bit of an explanation on that is because it leads me back to one thing you said. When things are starting to manifest in illness and distress, what are some of the ways that a consumer comes in and you pick up on that? So, we call that pre-diabetic, or there are obviously some different terms that float around out there that people may be able to relate to. But how do you look at that from a client and objectify, hey, Mrs. Smith, you're not there yet. However, here are some markers that we're looking at that have us concerned, and here's what we want to do about that. Can you talk about that sort of initial exam and what would bring people in to really kind of take more of a proactive approach to their health?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of this. One, it's people that are feeling it,
Hmm.
and maybe they've gone to their doctor and they have fatigue, they don't have the energy they used to have, they're not able to lose weight, they know something is wrong, but their doctor's telling them your labs are all normal.
Gotcha.
So I love this quote that says, symptoms are sacred messengers and not enemies to be destroyed. And what that means is if you're feeling it in your body, that's a communication from your body that something is off.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of people coming in that they feel something is off, but it's not diagnostic from the conventional medicine perspective yet.
Right. Right.
So symptoms in themselves are our markers, our messengers, right? We can go on that. We don't need, we don't need to wait until it's so bad to provide a diagnosis to know that something's wrong cellularly. But we can also do some blood work. And when we start to look at blood work from an optimal, physiologically optimal perspective, instead of diagnostic perspective, that changes the game quite a bit. So in traditional medicine, blood work is used for diagnostic criteria. If you are diabetic, your A1C is off the chart. And now medicine is starting to identify pre-diabetic, which is great, right? But that wasn't the case. It was you're fine until you have diabetes. Right. Now we say pre-diabetes. Well, even before pre-diabetes, you have blood sugar imbalance and insulin resistance. But that's not diagnostic in medicine yet. Right. But that's something in the functional medicine world that we would say. So when you start to look at the blood work from the opposite end of the spectrum, which is what is physiologically optimal, what should your chemistry look like when your body is repairing, regenerating, and maintaining itself, preventing premature aging, that reference range is very different than the reference range to diagnose you with an illness or a disease.
Gotcha.
And so when people come in, sometimes they're feeling it, sometimes they're not feeling it. We can still look at the blood work and say, like, you're outside of optimal physiological range. You're not diagnostic, right? You're probably not experiencing some significant chronic illness at this point, but you're in the yellow.
Yeah.
Right? You're not in the green, you're not in the red, but you're in the yellow. And if you would like to, prevent yourself from manifesting something, here's what you need. Here's how you need to support your body.
And the symptoms you're talking about, just from a subjective perspective, would be, maybe fatigue or weight loss or weight gain or emotional issues, inability to sleep. And when you say off, it could be a variety of those or a combination of those, but it's in that realm. Hey, I'm not able to do the things I used to be able to do, but it doesn't seem normally age related, right? I mean, it's natural to be less flexible at 50 than it was at 30, to a degree, right? But it's not in that range. It's something's not working correctly, and it could get more complex than that from an organ specific perspective as well, right?
Absolutely, right. And a lot of times people have never been their optimal and they don't even know what that looks like, right? So it's like, if you are not living your best life, if you have something in your body that's preventing you from living your best life, I would say there's opportunity.
Gotcha. And the first step on that, from what I've heard you say, it sounds like is a comprehensive blood work. So that's not just the one vial that looks at your white blood cell count and your red blood cell count and some other basic like CBC stuff. I would assume it goes into much more detail, and then I would assume not only one blood draw, but another one over a period of time to maybe look at a somewhat of a trend analysis too. Is that getting better? Is it getting worse with treatment as well, right? So that's a comprehensive panel that usually is not just a typical insurance covered sick care panel that they do, right?
Yeah, I like how you said that. The sick care panel is limited, right? We're trying to identify major issues. Are you at risk of significant disease or death?
Right.
And that is regulated by insurance. You have to, if you want to get any blood work done, you have to convince your doctor to convince your insurance company
that you're sick.
That you're sick
Right.
enough to get the test. So when you bypass that and you just order the labs to get the information, health can become very, very empowered because it is much more comprehensive. The blood work that we do in our clinics, is more blood work than most people have ever gotten in their entire lives. And half of the markers will come back normal, and that's great. And many markers will come back out of range. and people had no idea. And that gives us insight into which systems in the body, which organs need the most support. Because again, we're trying to promote the optimal functioning of the body. We're not just trying to turn off symptoms. We're trying to identify which systems and organs are affected, which needs, the most support. And then that helps guide us into which nutrients, which plant medicines are going to be most appropriate for somebody.
Yeah, that's good. And it's to your point. Then I want to get to treatments, right? My wife went to a functional medicine doctor quite a few years ago and said, you need to go. So I went, and I remember, from my experience, I'd gotten blood drawn here and there when I was sick or whatever, went to the doctor for my annual physical, and I went there, and I think they took, I have no idea the number of vials, but it was an incredible amount of blood. I was like, what in the world? And even the tech was like, I don't think I've ever drawn this much blood. Are you going to be, you have to promise me you're not going to work out today and you're going to go drink some water. And I was like, don't worry. I mean, I left there and I could tell, something was a little off, and that's because I just lost 6 liters of blood. But I got a comprehensive analysis that was multiple pages long. And to your point, I went back to everything was good. So like all the markers were good, and there wasn't any yellow, there wasn't any concern. So I ended up back at the regular doctor the next year. The functional medicine person was like, "You're in really good shape. Congratulations, but you don't really need to see me right now, and keep doing what you're doing." I was like, okay. So I went back to my regular doctor the next year. I said, "Yeah, I had some blood work done, last year, and da da da." And I showed him, and he almost fell off his chair. He's like, "I've never seen this much blood work actually done on somebody." Like, and knowing it was that comprehensive. He was very inquisitive, like, "Where did you get this done? This is incredible." So it was kind of neat to open up that conversation and somewhat educate him. I mean, in a different position than I am now, but on what that space, it looked like, and what are some of the different things, that were being looked at and monitored. Um, so with that said, we spent a considerable amount of time, which was really good, on like what gets the patient sort of, or the client, in the door, and then what kind of objective measures, and triggers can kind of get them, tested and outlined. Let's shift gears now to what are outside of the traditional just IVs, right? Are there other ancillary treatments that you guys at IV Nutrition use, in order to help keep the person in the yellow or get them back to the green, if possible, when those markers are out of place? And or could the ancillary treatments also consist of other opportunities to affect the patient in a positive way outside of the IV space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a holistic approach. So, at IV Nutrition, our mission is really to empower people in their health. So we're going to start with just looking at the full picture, which a lot of times people have never had somebody sit down and look at their health from a holistic approach, right? You go to the gastroenterologist for your gut, you go to the neurologist for your brain, the internist, right, or the endocrinologist. So we really want to first just sit down and look holistically at the being and what are all the factors involved. Because we are all physical beings, but we're also emotional, spiritual, and mental beings too. So our stress levels can impact us, our relationships can impact our health. There's a lot of different things. So we really want to first just look at the full picture. And then, yes, IVs are very helpful for people, but we also offer other therapies as well on a very personalized, customized basis. So even though we prefer IVs, you can't put everything in an IV at this point. I
Right,
wish
right,
we
right.
could. I wish
Yeah,
we could.
yeah,
That would make it a lot easier. But
right.
there's still a lot of nutraceuticals, plant medicines, hormone therapies, things like that that people need to promote their health, and we make those things accessible as well. Or sometimes it's referring out to the physical therapist. I really
Yeah,
think that these physical issues, these very mechanical issues, right? If you've got something subluxated in your spine, or you've got some tendon damage or something like that, that's a mechanical issue, you need to address that mechanically. So we really want to support people holistically and make sure that they have the right support, and so that they can heal on all levels of themselves and heal holistically, because that's how people sustain their results, is when they make those changes, and we try to help guide them in that. Sometimes it is meeting with another provider, sometimes it's
Right.
lifestyle change, and we try to
Yeah,
guide them
yeah.
through that lifestyle change as well.
Right, right. So what is a typical workflow look like? So if I'm John Smith and I'm out in the community and I'm having some symptoms that aren't feeling right, and I've heard great things about you guys, which I'm sure I have in your areas. I call to make an appointment, and what is just to break down the barrier of like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to go there or not. What does that look like from a client's perspective after the initial phone call?
Yeah, so we like to meet people where they're at. Some people really just want to come in for that hangover cure, right? Or that migraine. Some people are ready to dive in right away.
Okay,
So we meet them where they're at, and we have that conversation with them, and we gauge what is their readiness, right? And that's what
gotcha.
I love about IVs, is because IVs can give you results very fast. So if somebody comes in with that migraine, and we're able to alleviate that quickly and naturally, that before they had to go to the emergency room and spend $5,000 and all of this medications for, we just changed their mind completely.
Hmm.
So then that opens them up, after they've experienced that relief, that opens them up to a bigger conversation in which we recommend blood work and going
Gotcha.
more in depth. So we are very customizable, and I think that's what sets us apart, is that we are that customizable. And sometimes it's too customizable, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
Sometimes we can get into the weeds a little bit, but that's okay, because some people need that. Some people
Right.
need to go into the weeds, and some people just need that relief, and they aren't ready to make huge changes in their life. And that's what I love about IV nutrient therapy, is like, wherever you are in your readiness and your healing journey, providing your body with the resources that it needs for cellular health is going to be life changing. And
Yeah.
then that's where people, after they've gotten their second, third, fourth IV, they're like, wow, this is amazing. I have felt better than I have felt in years. I want to go deeper. I want to get the blood work done. I want to be the best that I can possibly be. So I would say most people that come into us, they get a few IVs, they get a few injections, and then they decide, I'm going to do the blood work. Now, if somebody
Right,
comes
right.
in and they do have more significant symptoms, they have a diagnosed illness. Generally, those are the ones that we say, let's go ahead and get the blood work done. We want to make sure that, we're being as optimal as we can to what your body needs, and as customized as we can with you. So let's go ahead and get that done first, so that we can have that, customized recommendation plan specific to your unique chemistry ready for you to get started.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for walking through that. I've got one other follow-up on that. What have you seen, with the typical person that comes in that you've described that that comes in, does a few IVs, kind of gets hooked, gets some blood work done, and figures out they can improve in some other categories, right? Once they get that treatment and they end up, let's say, out of the yellow and back maybe to the green, do you see them, do you see that as like a long-term fix, or is it something, like exercise? If somebody's overweight and they start an exercise program and they lose weight and they get in shape, they should, in a best practice scenario, continue to exercise, because there's proven benefits to that, long term down the road, and it helps keep their weight down, et cetera, et cetera. What do you see from a clinical perspective with some of these different markers, assuming they've made some positive changes in their life from a lifestyle perspective that might have or might have not have gotten them into some of these positions? Does it stick, or is that sort of hey, glad we got you in the green, and to keep you in the green, it's probably going to take you, some consistency in visits, and IVs, et cetera, over the course of, the rest of your life? Like, what do you see with that?
So I think, people don't realize how much maintenance the human
Right.
body is.
Yeah.
And we've never been educated about that. And that's kind of a tragedy, I think,
Hmm. Yeah.
because we've never learned what is the potential of the human body and what is true health. Some of us have, but for the most part, as a generalization, we never learn that. We learn that you don't go to the doctor unless you're really sick, and otherwise you're fine.
Yeah.
And if you
Yep.
develop a chronic illness later, that sucks, and that's kind of a random thing that happened to you. So yes, like that's you need consistency. You need to maintain your body. But I like to use this analogy. When you have inflammation, when you have disease processes going on, when you have some imbalances going on and you're not feeling well, you have hormone imbalance, you have chronic fatigue, whatever it is, and you start to work on your health, in the beginning, it's going to require more. When you're fighting a war, right, and damage is being done, you need a lot of resources to not only fight the war, but to repair the damage.
Right. Right. Okay.
Versus when you're at peace, when you're at homeostasis, that requires less maintenance.
Hmm.
And that's the same for the human body. When you're in a health crisis, when you have an imbalance going on, you're going to need to do more for your body. You're going to have to do more IVs. You're going to have to heal your gut, heal your liver, right? Heal all of these things and go through the process of eliminating toxins from your system, reducing oxidative stress, getting yourself back into that reparative state, right? And after
Yeah.
that reparative state, then it gets fun because then you can go into the longevity state, the regenerative, right? And then
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about anti-aging and biohacking.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Right.
definitely a spectrum. So it's like, how far do you want to take it?
Yeah.
And how do you want to support your body? But every single human body is going to require a certain level of maintenance, and our body runs on nutrition. That's just
Yep.
reality, right? When you look at chemistry, biochemistry, go look into a biochemistry textbook that doesn't have anything to do with pharmacology, and the whole thing runs on nutrition.
Right. Right.
So, yes, you're going to need a certain level of consistency and maintenance to do that. And everybody's different. And if you live in the perfect, environment of, if you lived in a little bubble of clean air and clean water and no stress, and, you had everything that you needed, your maintenance would be less than somebody living in reality.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Of course.
even
Of
if you're
course.
doing everything right, you still
Yeah.
have the environment to deal with. You still,
Yeah.
have the water and the air and the lack of nutrition in our food to deal with. So
Hmm.
that's always going to require a certain level of consistency. But with us, most people sort of, be more intensive for 6 months to a year to really get their bodies to that place that they are living their best life and they feel vibrant and amazing and they have the energy and they've been the healthiest that they've ever been. And then they start to kind of do less and do more of a maintenance program, once a
Gotcha.
month or quarterly or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, hey, our time is up. I thought this was super fascinating, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to not only share your story and background and a little bit about IV nutrition, but also help educate the public on what you guys do and how you do it and how it's beneficial to them. So I just want to, on behalf of AIVA and everybody else out there that's going to listen to this webinar, just wanted to say thanks and. You guys keep doing what you're doing. You have a great reputation out in the Midwest, and you're growing like crazy. So we appreciate your support as well, and we'll get this out to as many people as we can to help educate them. But thanks a lot, Dr.
Yeah,
Zeller, for your time.
I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate what the organization is trying to do here, because we need to make this accessible and affordable. And
Yeah,
I know that we share in that same mission with AIVA and with IV Nutrition, that functional medicine, regenerative medicine should be accessible and it should be affordable, and that's our main mission is to do
yeah.
that.
And you guys
And
are
I
doing
know
it the
AIVA
right. You guys doing it the
is
right
trying.
way too. So it's not like you're just doing it. You're doing it right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome.